Babylon, a city that became a legend and turned to ruins before it was ever truly built. How is that even possible? Let's move across 1,000 years of history and untangle that contradiction step by step. This is the story of Babylon's two greatest kings, Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar II. How the Tower of Babel actually came to be, what the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis really were, and what daily life looked like for ordinary Babylonians living under a system of laws that Europe wouldn't match for another 3,500 years. Looking for Babylon's origins is like staring into fog. Nobody knows for certain who founded the city or exactly when. The earliest written reference to it comes from the 23rd century BC, during the reign of a grandson of Sargon of Akkad. At that point, the city wasn't even called Babylon. In Sumerian, its name meant Gate of God. Later, in Akkadian, the same meaning survived under a different sound, Bab-ilu. Over time, Akkadian replaced Sumerian, and the name stuck. From there, it passed into Greek and picked up the pronunciation the world still uses, Babylon. Babylon's real history starts after the collapse of the Sumero-Akkadian kingdom, around 2000 BC, when the city was seized by nomadic Amorite tribes. About a century later, an Amorite chieftain named Sumu-Abum founded the first Babylonian dynasty. Once he took power, he raised defensive walls, dug canals, and built new temples. Then he went on the offensive. He captured and destroyed the neighboring city of Kazalu, formed alliances with the rulers of Kish and Sippar, and by the end of his life had folded in the cities of Dilbat and Kutha as well. An unremarkable little town had turned into the capital of a future power. That kingdom Babylon once belonged to had stretched from the Persian Gulf coast to the north of Mesopotamia, and lasted roughly a century before it began crumbling. Amorite tribes attacked constantly. Starving locals rose in revolt. In the south, the Elamites broke away, demanding independence outright. The kingdom fractured, and Mesopotamia turned into an arena of endless war. Isin and Larsa in the center, Assyria and Mari in the north, Eshnunna in the east, Elam in the south, all clashing over territory, none holding a decisive edge. It was the Babylonian king Hammurabi who would eventually unite these warring states into a single power. He came from the first Babylonian dynasty, the sixth ruler after Sumu-Abum, born in the early 19th century BC. Around the same time, the builders in prehistoric Britain were finishing Stonehenge. Hammurabi inherited a kingdom stretching from Sippar to Marad, and at the time, it wasn't remotely the strongest state on the map. Larsa, Eshnunna, Elam, and the northern realm of Shamshi-Adad I all posed far bigger threats. In his early years on the throne, Hammurabi didn't wage wars of conquest at all. The first thing he did as king was forgive his subjects' debts. In the years that followed, he rebuilt temples, reinforced walls, and dug canals. Only in his 7th year did he finally go to war, against Isin and Uruk, taking both at once, cities that belonged to Rimsin, ruler of Larsa. Rimsin didn't retaliate immediately. Hammurabi had already secured an alliance with Shamshi-Adad, and Rimsin apparently decided to bide his time. A year later, He took the cities back by force, and an extended peace settled between the two kings, while Hammurabi turned his ambitions elsewhere. His decisive, victorious campaigns didn't begin until his 30th year on the throne, when he crushed the combined armies of Eshnunna, Malgium, and Elam. Following that win, he declared, for the first time, that Babylon's borders now covered the whole of Lower Mesopotamia. That was a direct challenge to Rimsin, and war became unavoidable. Hammurabi marched his troops to Larsa's walls. The city held out under siege for a month before falling. What became of Rimsin afterward is unknown. From the fallen king, Hammurabi took the title Father of the Amorites. After his ally Shamshi-Adad died, the kingdom of Upper Mesopotamia fell apart, and Assyria and Mari broke free, so Hammurabi subdued them too. By his 38th year, he'd captured Eshnunna and beaten back a wave of nomadic raiders. All of Mesopotamia now answered to him. Hammurabi was a brilliant negotiator and strategist, and those skills turned Babylon from an obscure town into the capital of a celebrated kingdom. But that was only half of who he was. Hammurabi also became one of history's first lawmakers, and that's what pushed Babylon into its golden age. Once his power was secure, Hammurabi launched judicial reforms. A full code of laws was drawn up, defining the rights and obligations of everyone in the kingdom, carved into a diorite stele, topped with a carving of Hammurabi standing before Shamash, god of the sun and of justice. Hammurabi held near absolute authority, a real departure from earlier rulers who'd needed the high priesthood's backing just to hold on to power. Babylonian society split into 3 tiers with unequal rights. Most people were free, the Awilum, who owned land and largely governed their own affairs. Hammurabi mostly stayed out of their business. Below them were the Mushkenum, dependents who held land on royal territory and served the government, a tier that could include both low-status farmers and state officials at once. At the bottom were slaves, or wardom, captured soldiers, or people who'd lost their freedom through crime or debt. In the eyes of the law, a slave was property. If someone maimed or killed one, the guilty party paid only for the material loss. But here's the crucial detail. In Babylon, nobody was born without rights entirely. If a slave woman had children with a free man, those children were born free. And even if the father never acknowledged them, the enslaved mother could not be sold away. She stayed with her children. Much of Hammurabi's code rested on the principle of talion, an eye for an eye. But liability shifted with social class. Under Hammurabi, the high priests and temples lost their grip on lawmaking entirely. For the first time in history, crimes were treated in a genuinely legal sense, as offenses against human life and the foundations of society, not violations of sacred command. Judges became royal appointees, with priests reduced to assistants, and any judge who broke the law himself could be stripped of his post. Hammurabi's laws also protected women and children about as far as the era allowed. A woman counted as a full, independent member of her family. If her husband was unfaithful, falsely accused her of adultery, or assaulted her, she could take the matter to court. And if she proved her case, the marriage was dissolved and she was free to remarry. If a wife died, her husband had no claim to her personal property. It passed to their children. And if a man had children by both his wife and a lawful concubine, every child received an equal share of his estate when he died, and the concubine and her children were granted their freedom. Not everyone in Babylon enjoyed equal standing, but the respected place given to women within the family and the protections extended to children say a lot about how sophisticated that society already was. Hammurabi took the first real step toward making sure, in his own words, that the strong shall not oppress the weak. After Hammurabi died, the Babylonian kingdom's influence over Mesopotamia faded. 5 centuries later, Babylon found itself under pressure from Assyria, which had grown into a major power. Trying to fend off the Assyrian threat, Babylonian kings started looking for outside support, and the standoff between Babylon and Assyria would drag on for the next 5 centuries. By the 8th century BC, weakened by attacks from the Chaldeans, Babylon turned to its old rival Assyria for help. Assyria agreed, a fateful decision. The Assyrian king crushed the Chaldeans on Babylon's behalf, but sent his own governor to run the city in return. It didn't take long for Babylonians to feel exactly how weak their position had become. Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, broke with tradition and placed a young Babylonian aristocrat named Bel-Ibni on the throne, a man raised specifically at the Assyrian court to ensure his loyalty. Sennacherib himself called him a puppy raised in my palace, but the puppy quickly showed its teeth. Bel-Ibni conspired with the Babylonians and raised a revolt. Sennacherib crushed it and installed his own son instead, who was captured by the invading Elamites and most likely executed. After that, revolt followed revolt, one right after another. Eventually, Sennacherib returned to Babylon with a single purpose: destroy it completely. His own inscriptions record exactly how ruthless he intended to be. "With the bodies of Babylonians, I filled the squares of the city," he wrote. "The gods who dwelt in the city were seized by the hands of my warriors and smashed. The city and its houses, from foundation to wall, I destroyed and consigned to fire." To finish the job, Sennacherib had the charred ruins flooded. His soldiers breached the riverbank, and water filled every street. That was the end of Babylon. And then something happened that people at the time saw as a direct act of the gods. In 681 BC, Sennacherib was murdered by his own sons. For the people of Mesopotamia, this wasn't a palace conspiracy. It was Marduk's verdict. The god whose statue had been dragged out of Babylon had taken his revenge in blood. Babylon's rebuilding began almost immediately after Sennacherib's death. The work took roughly 20 years, and new palaces rose on the sites of the destroyed ones with a splendor the city hadn't seen before. This is the Babylon whose ruins have largely survived down to today, laid out in the 7th century BC. And it's around this point that a new chapter opens, the Neo-Babylonian period. Survivors drifted back into the rebuilt city alongside the Chaldeans, who by then already populated Mesopotamia. Over time, they gained rights and started influencing the affairs of state. One of these Chaldeans was Nabopolassar, a military commander for Nineveh, Assyria's capital. When the Assyrian Empire started to weaken, Nabopolassar rebelled with his own army, marched on Babylon, and took one city after another. Once he took Babylon itself, he claimed the throne and founded the new Neo-Babylonian dynasty. In 612 BC, his forces brought down Nineveh for good. After Nabopolassar died, power passed to his son, Nebuchadnezzar II, who led Babylon into a new golden age. Nebuchadnezzar was born around 630 BC, around the same time as the future poet Sappho and the future founder of Athenian democracy, Solon. His name meant Nabu, protect my firstborn. He inherited an empire that already covered the whole of Mesopotamia and kept pushing its borders outward. The one rival he never fully conquered was Egypt, simply because the two sides were too evenly matched. Under him, tribute that once flowed to Nineveh now went straight to Babylon. People relocated to the capital, and the population grew quickly. Early in his reign, Nebuchadnezzar restored the ziggurat from Hammurabi's time. Etemenanki, House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, which became the tallest structure in Mesopotamia and later inspired the myth of the Tower of Babel. For his wife Amytis, Nebuchadnezzar may have built the legendary Hanging Gardens, the second of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Legend says Amytis was a Median princess, homesick for her homeland's shaded forests and high mountains, and that the gardens were built so she could lose herself in that memory. And yet, to this day, nobody actually knows whether the gardens existed at all. Not a single Babylonian text from Nebuchadnezzar's own time mentions them. It's the only one of the 7 wonders whose very existence is still in question. But even if the gardens are only a legend, what Nebuchadnezzar built around Babylon was entirely real. He raised a double wall around the city with a combined thickness of about 90 feet, roughly the width of a 4-lane highway, wide enough for 4-horse chariots to race along the top side by side. The Great Wall of China, by comparison, runs 15 to 30 feet wide. The city itself covered roughly 2,200 acres, with a population most estimates put at around 200,000, likely making Babylon the first city in human history to cross that mark, at a time when Athens held about 90,000 people and Rome was still a village. Then there was the Ishtar Gate, the city's main entrance, built to knock the breath out of anyone approaching it. It rose 50 feet above ground, with its foundation running another 46 feet below, a total height of 95 feet. The entire facade was covered in glazed bricks of vivid cobalt blue, so bright that from a distance the gate seemed carved from solid lapis lazuli. Set against that blue backdrop were 575 relief figures, dragons and bulls, arranged across 13 rows. Walk through the gate and you'd find yourself on the processional way, more than half a mile long, wider than Broadway in New York, lined with 120 life-sized glazed lions. And here's a detail that shows just how deliberate the whole design was. The lions on the eastern wall stepped forward on their left paw, while the ones on the western wall led with their right, so that anyone walking toward the gate would feel as if 2 columns of lions were closing in from both sides at once. The Neo-Babylonian kingdom didn't last long in the end, roughly a century in total. Nebuchadnezzar's reign coincided with Babylon's rise and prosperity, and its decline began almost the moment he died. By 539 BC, the Persian king Cyrus II had already conquered Babylon. Babylon lost its key territories one by one, though the city held on to some self-governance for a few more decades, until 481 BC, when the Babylonians rose in revolt against the Persians. The Persian king Xerxes crushed the uprising and devastated the city all over again. As a final, symbolic gesture, the Persians carried off the statue of Marduk, and with that, Babylon's divine protector left the city for good, and its long fade into twilight began. And now, the most important part. Remember the paradox we opened with? Babylon became a legend and turned to ruins before it was even founded. Now you know how that's possible. Hammurabi's Babylon, the celebrated, legendary one, was the one Sennacherib destroyed and drowned beneath the water. It's gone. The ruins archaeologists actually uncovered, the ones still standing today in the Iraqi desert, belong to a different Babylon entirely. The one Nebuchadnezzar built on the site of the one that was destroyed. The legend was born before the stones that remain from it. We know Babylon through its second life, but we remember it for its first.